Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alison, the online piano and violin tutor. If the violin is shaking when you're trying to do vibrato, that is the number one sign that you are attempting vibrato too soon. Number one, the first thing you're going to need is a violin. I have been playing the violin since I was 4 years old. I went to university and graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in music.
With the amazing talent that's Alison Sparrow. Alison, come out here.
So bear with me if there are any technical hitches, I'm sure it'll be fine. For about 5 years I was an examiner for the London College of Music. And over the years I've seen basically the music world from every kind of possible view really, and because of that it has enabled me to write my own violin course. Hello everyone, welcome. So there we go, that's kind of all you really need to know. And don't forget guys, anyone can learn to play the violin. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alison, the online piano and the online violin tutor. So thank you very much for joining me again today on another live video, and today we're going to be talking about how you can bow smoothly like a professional. Before we get into the video, as usual, tell me in the chats section, I think it's that side, where you're from, and I will give you a little shout out later on. And for those of you who are new to my channel, hello and welcome, it's nice to have you here. And for all my new subscribers and participants, I have a 1 to 30 violin course that guarantees to take you from a complete beginner to a very accomplished intermediate violinist in just 30 lessons. The course is priced at $59.99 US, which is affordable, and the first 10 lessons and everything you need for that are absolutely free. The course is 100% downloadable, don't forget. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to bow smoothly. And if you've ever wondered how and why professionals sound like they do, so what is it that is the difference between the way you are playing, for example, as beginners or, you know, maybe semi-professionalists, whatever. I'm going to assume that most of you guys that are watching are beginners. So what is the difference between the way the professionals are playing and the way that you're playing? And I'm not necessarily talking about, obviously they're going to be much better because those people are going to be world class and they've been playing for decades, but what is it specifically about their playing that they are doing that you are not? There must be something they're doing that you're not doing, and quite frankly most of it is all down to the bow. The bow is the one that makes the sound, and it's all going to do with the fingers and how you're holding the bow and how you're moving the bow specifically, and I'll show you in a second in a demonstration what difference that makes. And when you watch them, or when you listen to them, I should say, you can't actually hear, the identifying thing with this is that you can't actually hear when they're changing bows, because it sounds like one smooth sonorous sound. So you've got no idea when they're changing bow. It's not as if, for example, when my students first start out, and everybody's guilty of this, and this isn't a bad thing, I'm not saying anything like that. This is just typically what people do. I'm just going to move back so you can see me. So when my students first start bowing, it will be more like this. Actually, let me just turn my microphone down just a fraction. So when they're bowing, it's more... So when they're bowing, they're stopping the bow at the bottom, stop, bow up, stop, 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 stop. So the difference is that you can actually hear a sound before the bow moves up. And that makes the notes and the overall sound of it feel very, just very jittery, very disjunct, just very all over the place, because there's too much sound. Now the difference is that these professionals, they're bowing smoothly, and this is all going to come down to the hand movements, of which we're going to go into detail in just a few seconds. I want to say hello to a few people first. Nathaniel, hello. I have seen you for about the last 2 or 3 weeks, so hello again. Amol, yes. Anmol, sorry, my mistake. Hello. What else have we got there? Please do a tutorial on the violins. Yes, I can do that. Jet, hello from Manchester. Nice to see you. Someone from Ben from Texas. Matthew from Massachusetts. John from Northern Carolina. Hello, nice to see you all here. Thanks for joining me today. Okay, so where were we? Playing smoothly. So it's all going to be down to the bow hold. Let me just put my violin down, and hopefully you can hear me. I'm just going to turn this up a second. Right. So first of all, you've got to make sure that you are holding the bow correctly, and not just that you think you're holding the bow correctly, but you really do have to make sure you're holding this bow correctly. So this isn't a technique that I would recommend you do as a complete beginner. So if you only started like last week, don't do this. Park this video, save this video, and then you can move on to it at a later date. Do not try and do this if you've been only playing 5 minutes, because you're going to find it very, very difficult. By all means, if you want to have a little dabble, you want to have a little try, but this is a very difficult technique. So this isn't something that you're going to get in a week. This took me months, an embarrassing amount of time to get. It took months, and you will see as you start to do this. So I wonder if any of you have your bow at hand, because we can try this together. So go and get your violin bow. If not, if it's just too much trouble to do that, get hold of a pen or a pencil, because we can try the technique on a pen or a pencil. So if you can't get your bow, get a pen or a pencil. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that your thumb is bent on the frog like it should be. So this is where we don't want to be having the thumb slipping through the bow like this. We want to have the thumb bent, and we want to have the nail kind of hooked into the wood, if that sort of makes sense. So however you are holding the bow with your fingers, it doesn't really matter at this point. This is how I teach my bow holds, and this is what I do in my course. So any of you that are following my course, then yes, you're probably going to be holding the bow quite similar to me. But if you're not, it doesn't really matter. That's not the point. The point here is that you are holding the bow as correctly as you can, but that your thumb is nice and bent. Just trying to find a good, there you go. So that's a good angle for you to see. So your thumb must be bent, and it must be nice and secure in there. Now, what we're going to do with this technique is basically we want to draw, let me come around here. We want to draw the wood of the bow into the hand. So I've done this movement quite a few times in my videos. So can you see what I'm doing there? I'm trying to show you at all different kinds of angles. So I'm bending the fingers whilst keeping everything bent and keeping all my fingers there. And I'm bending them, and I'm kind of drawing the wood of the bow into the kind of flat of my hand. Now that in itself is very difficult. So you're probably going to feel like you're going to drop the bow. If you drop the bow, that's fine. What you can do is just hold it. Sometimes it's easier to just hold the bow with your other hand, and then I'll hold it here so you can see, and then just lightly hold it just so you don't drop the bow, and then try and draw into your hand like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this with my left hand. Now this is very alien to me, but this is a good indication for me of how it's going to be like for you. So let me see if I can. This is very bizarre. So there's my bow hold. My thumb doesn't really want to stay bent. It wants to push under. So you guys are going to find exactly the same thing. But what you want to do, hold the bow, and then try and draw. You will find your little finger not wanting to go. This is a very difficult movement for me to do with my left hand, but you will find the most problem probably with your little finger. So this is where you just see my thumb has already slipped. So that is how my thumb is going to end up, but we don't want that. We want the thumb to stay exactly where it is when you normally bow. So this is very difficult for me to do with my left hand. I think I can only do it with my left hand because my brain understands what I need to do with my right hand. But then when you see me do it with my right hand, I mean, look at it go. It's just got a mind of its own. There it is. I mean, the thumb is slipping out occasionally, and it will do that because I haven't got the bow with the pressure on the violin, on the strings of the violin. But what you can do is grab a pencil and do the same with a pencil. So I would recommend that you just walk around with a pencil in your pocket wherever you are. I've got them on the desk behind me there. So wherever you are, just do the same thing with a pencil and just try and draw that pencil into your hands, trying to make sure that your thumb is bent. It's not exactly the same because you don't actually have the weight of the bow, but you know, it's probably easier in a way because the pencil is quite light. So you'll probably find that you'll drop it less, and you don't have to worry necessarily what's going on here. The key is to keep that thumb nice and bent there. So have a go at doing this, and this will really help you pull your fingers in. Let me try it with my other. Yeah, so it's easier for me to do it like this, but I mean my thumb is still slipping out. Okay, let's have a look at some questions. Have we got any going? And then I'll get on with the rest of the video. Question. So Mia, can I measure the placement of the violin on where my bow is correct when being the furthest downwards? Hard to explain, but if you have the bow all the way down when it shows. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? I'm not really quite sure what you mean by that question. Let's Time says, is it a light grip or a tight grip? If are you talking about holding the bow for this? It's just a normal grip. You shouldn't be gripping too hard. You shouldn't be it should just be as you normally hold. Just be as you normally hold the bow. The only difference is that we're trying to pull the wood into the palm of our hand, but we're really just trying to bend all those fingers. And when we're trying to bend all those fingers quite evenly all at the same time. Animal says, having looked at your other videos on this bow hold, there have been occasions where I've just dropped the bow on the floor. Well, yeah. So the only way around that, just hold. If you're doing it not on the violin, which we're going to go on to in just a moment, hold the bow so that you can do the technique there. Don't put too much pressure there because you won't be able to sort of pull the bow, but you just want enough there just if you do drop the bow. But if you're dropping the bow, it's because your thumb is slipping out. But to be honest, my thumb does move position, but again, the bow isn't in contact with anything on the string. So once you feel confident doing that, and you can do it with a pen or a pencil or whatever, and you're happy with the bow, let's move on to the actual violin. So the first part of this, and then when we put it all together at the end, you will see and you will hear the difference. So the first part of this is, now you've got the hang of doing all that, we're going to assume that you've done that and you feel confident with that. We're going to put the bow on the strings. Now, this is where you need to forewarn anybody else in your house, because this is going to sound absolutely dreadful. So we are not concerned of the sound. I'll say that again. We're not worried about the sound it's making. The sound is rubbish. It's crappy sound, but that's fine because we just want the fingers to move. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the bow on the string. Just the A string is easy. Don't do it on the E. You can do it on the D if you want to. A is just always the easiest string, and you want to put the bow around about where your index finger is, somewhere sort of around that, maybe sort of, you know, maybe an inch or two from, sorry, let's get my fingers out of the way, maybe an inch or two from the frog, sort of somewhere there. It doesn't really matter as long as you are at the bottom or at the heel of the bow. So what you want to do is place the bow on the string like this, and we're going to be bending and straightening the fingers and moving maybe about a centimetre. So it will look something like this. So can you see I'm not actually moving my hand? All I'm doing is just extending out my fingers, pulling them in, extending, pulling them in, extending, pulling them in. And this is the sound it should make. So place the bow on the string, and you can start down or up. It doesn't really matter. So perhaps if you start sort of upwards, so that you go downwards, so you can go down first, up, and the fingers are going to be in, down, and the fingers are flexed out. Bring the fingers up, down, up. So you can see all I'm doing is this. This is all I'm doing. So I'm not actually moving anything. I'm just moving my fingers up and down. And that just so happens to just move the bow by about, I don't know, a couple of centimetres, an inch, something like that. So it doesn't matter if you hit any other strings. That's absolutely fine. Don't worry about that. We are not worried about the sound. We are worried about the technique. Okay, Jet says, it's hard to keep the pinky curved when trying to reach the tip of the bow. Yeah, when you are moving the bow, don't worry too much about your little finger. I do a hybrid between the Franco-Belgian bow hold, which is slightly more like this, where the little finger kind of sits on top vertically more, and the Russian bow hold, where the Russian bow hold is very tilted. So I sort of do, I hold the Franco-Belgian way, but I tilt a lot more when I do the Russian bow hold. So you can see I tilt a lot more to my index finger. Now what that actually means is that my little finger is more tilted, so I don't have to worry about flexing my little finger, because as I'm tilted, it wants to bend naturally. So you could, if you're finding it quite difficult, you could try tilting your bow a little bit more, and it might take a little bit more of pressure off your little finger. I think what a lot of people do is they have too much pressure on the little finger, and that the little finger is just, there's a very small tendon that goes to there, and it's not a very powerful one. There's no muscle in there. It's a very weak tendon, and we can't really do much with the last two fingers. We have all the power kind of in these three, so we just have to train our fingers to kind of move the little finger and the ring finger, if you want to call it that. But I find it a lot easier to tilt down. Okay, Matthew Russell. I frequently experience wrist pain after an hour's practice. Is that common, or am I holding the bow incorrectly? If it is common, is it just a form of adjustment that will go away over time? Depends how long you've had the wrist pain, and it depends what kind of pain it is. You will feel achy. When I've been playing the violin for, I don't know, 2-3 hours, I'll find my left arm and my shoulder really aches. I have to put it sort of back because I'm holding the violin up all the time. But I won't lie, my right hand doesn't it doesn't feel any pain. So I would say if you are getting pain on the wrist of your violin bow, then you may have too much of a grip. Sort of, you may be holding on a little bit too tight there. You shouldn't really have any pain on the right hand. Maybe a little bit of achiness when you're holding up the violin, because a lot of people can't get used to holding a violin up in the air. It'd be like holding my arm up in the air for about an hour. But if you've got wrist pain, then you've probably got something going on here. Assuming you've got nothing underlying going on, then you're possibly just gripping too much. So obviously I can't see you, so I can't diagnose the problem, but you just need to make sure that that there should be no one finger should have more pressure or doing more work on the bow than anyone else. So if I were to take off any one of these fingers, I can just about do that just because I can't move this finger. The bow is still nice and, I've still got a nice even grip on the bow. No one finger is holding the bow. So if I let go of my index finger, the whole bow isn't going to drop down because the index finger was taking all of the weight. So it will probably be something to do with how you are holding. And also, you always want to make sure that your wrist is higher than your knuckles, which are higher than your fingers, which is higher than your bow. Perhaps if you are bowing too much like this. So this is how we want to bow. So you can see my wrist is this level and my bow and fingers are down here. But a lot of people bow like that. So their wrist is down. So have a check to see if you're bowing like that. If your wrist is down, then yes, it's probably going to put a lot more pressure and cause you a lot more pain. So we've learnt the technique by using a pencil and drawing those fingers into the drawing the wood of the bow into the palm of the hand with the fingers. And now we can do it with the bow here. And now what we're trying to do is to do the same thing just with the bow on the strings, and we're not moving anywhere, so don't worry about the sound of that. So the third component to this now is to actually put it all together. So I'm just going to go back a little bit. I'm going to go up so you can see me. So how this makes a difference is when you're bowing, so can you see when I'm doing my up and down bows, this is where my fingers are moving. Now, a lot of you do say to me that you see people's fingers moving quite smoothly like this, but you don't know how they're doing it. This is exactly the technique and the exercise that they are doing in order to nail this process. So this isn't, I would say this isn't something that will just naturally occur over time. This is curated. You have to do this or you will never be able to do it. I do not think in all the years that I have been teaching students and seeing them, teaching them for years and years, I've ever seen anybody gain really this kind of natural flexibility in the wrist just from playing it. Maybe the odd student here and there who is just exceptionally gifted, but more often than not, it is something that you actually have to work at. So if you want to stop going from this and play more like this, then you've got to be moving those fingers, and the movement is all in this. So you have to nail this part first. So remember, you're not actually just put the bow down on the violin. You're not actually moving. You're not moving. You can see I'm not moving my wrist or anything. All I'm doing is I'm just doing this movement that I did at the beginning, step 1, and then I'm just putting that on the violin. And then once you've got that, when you start to do your down bows, you can see as I'm coming up, I'm drawing the fingers up. Bow is coming, this way, bow is coming into the hand. I obviously do have contact with the string. I've taken it off just so that you can hear me. And then as I'm coming down, you then start to lengthen out the fingers. And then when you draw the bow up again, you're bringing the fingers in. And then when it's, when they're in enough, you then start to bring the bow down and flex out those fingers. When you get to the bottom, you're just bringing the bow up. It's much easier to cushion the transition when you're going to an up bow than it is to a down bow, because this is the hardest part. This is where you've got the most control, and this is where it can go out of control very easy. So this is the technique that you need to do. And this is where it all comes from doing this little movement here. So doing this without the violin is going to get you used to the hand movement, and then putting it on the string is going to allow you to do that movement with the bow on the violin, and then so as you can see, my hand is going, the fingers are going in and flexing, and then as the bow is coming up and it's changing to a down bow, I'm buffering that noise by bending the fingers and I'm basically just giving the bow just sort of like a nice bounce, a nice curve, as opposed to not doing anything. And then you can hear the difference. It's so harsh, but if you can get that movement, you're going to make everything just sound so much softer and much more how it should be. So that's pretty much it, to be honest with you. Like I say, it's a very, very difficult technique, I won't lie. So don't be frustrated with yourself. It's going to take a really long time. It took me a very, very long time to kind of do as well. So it's going to take you guys a really long time. But if you can, the more you can do with a pencil, I just used to go around with a pencil permanently attached to my fingers, just so I could kind of get used to it. It's this that's very, very difficult to do. So let's see if I've got any more questions. That one I've done. Kent, I've been following your lesson 1 to 30 on YouTube from about 5 years ago. Should I follow the new $60 course or continue with the older the older videos are the same as these ones, but the old 1 to 30 violin course I think or the old videos that I did back in the day, they're incomplete because they were such old videos. So I redid. I think I only did up to about lesson 10. So if you want to move on to lesson 20, you'll be on the new course. But all the books, if you've already bought the books from that series, then all the books are the same. It's just the videos are just they're just newer. They're just more updated, but that's it really. But it's still me. It's still the same sort of information. Okay, what else have we got? Yeah, I found out, Nathaniel, I found out recently that I may have carpal tunnel still working though. I've fallen in love with a violin just in the short time I've been learning and owe that enlarged partly to you. Oh, thank you, and you're welcome. Mia, my question is basically about how to place the arm of the violin. If I just place the violin, the bow tends to go too much out to the right when being the top of the bow because my arm can't. So if you are finding, I think what you're saying here, Mia, is that your arm is sort of, you're finding it difficult to bow all the way down because your arm isn't sort of long enough. If that's the case, just don't bow all the way down to the end of the bow. I used to have a few adults that were quite petite, so I've taught adults that are sort of 5'1" before. Sometimes if that is the case, a full-size violin can be a little bit too much, but also equally a 3/4 size violin can just be that little bit too short because it's not really designed for a fully grown adult, even though you are much shorter, for example. So you can get a 7/8 violin, but they are a little bit difficult to get hold of. But I would recommend still get a full-size violin, but just don't draw down to the end of the bow. If that's all your arm can take, whilst you are still staying perfectly parallel to the violin like this, then if the end of the bow for you is there, then that's the end of the bow. So I think that's what you mean. What you don't want to do is try to get all the way to the end of the bow, but you can't because this arm is not letting you, and then you end up going like that. So then you end up bowing, you know, on the squiff there. So you want to just, if that's the end of the bow for you up there, then that's the end of the bow. That's fine. But the priority would be to always keep the bow nice and straight, regardless of how much of that bow you can use. So hopefully that has answered your question, and I've not answered a completely random question. Yeah, I'll reach enough to the front of me. So yes, I think that's what you mean. What else have we got? So I'm just trying to, I don't want to miss anything. How do you manage the pressure when practicing that finger exercise? Don't worry about the pressure. It doesn't really matter. It's got nothing to do with the sound. In fact, it doesn't really matter if you put too much pressure down. This is me doing the exercise with too much pressure. This is me less pressure. I mean, now it sounds more like I'm just going because it sounds like an actual sound. But, you know, if you put a bit too much on and it sounds that kind of, don't worry about it. The sound is not the point. Ignore the sound, block your ears. Nobody cares. All we want is this. That's the only thing we want to be getting out of this. Because when you actually come to bow and you put it into action, the sound is going to be completely different anyway. So we just want this. Okay. Jet says, I'm trying to learn vibrato, but my fingers just seem very stiff. It's like the wood of the neck of the violin is preventing my vibrato motions. So I think I will do a separate video on vibrato because vibrato is probably the hardest thing, I think, to learn in the violin. So it would be quite nice if I actually did a live video on that, because then it's going to be much easier for me to respond to your questions. But vibrato is very, very difficult. The key to vibrato is not to be doing it too soon. So if you've only just started playing, you don't want to be doing vibrato because there's going to be a lot of other things that are going on. So you need to have the basics down before you do vibrato. The easiest way to tell really if you are too soon with vibrato is when you're actually doing it and the violin starts to shake. It really just means it's a good indication that you haven't really got a hang of the of the basics and things. But really what you want to do is, I feel like it's easier to start with the middle finger, and it's easy just to rock from one side of the fingernail to the other. That's how I explain it. But also you want to make sure that, if you notice, I've only got my thumb here and I've got nothing. Oh, there we go. I've got nothing else touching. So all I'm able to do then is to roll from one. I concentrate on rolling from one side of the fingernail to the other and keeping everything kind of loose and free. It's hard, but if you are gripping at any point with vibrato, you are not going to be able to do it. So if you're finding your fingers very stiff, your fingers are stiff, and you're maybe gripping in the wrong way, or maybe you are holding on to the violin too much with your fingers, in which case you need to hold on a little bit more up here. If you can't, I don't use a shoulder rest, but if you need to use a shoulder rest, then use a shoulder rest so that you can take, so that your chin or the shoulder rest can take the weight of the violin like this, so that when you come to do vibrato, you're not actually, there's no weight. All I'm doing is just putting my thumb up to prop the violin, and I'm simply rocking and rolling my nail, but all the weight is shifted onto here. So when I do vibrato, I do subconsciously feel myself gripping a bit more here. Not badly that I get any fatigue or pain or anything like that. I can just feel that I'm holding more so that I can allow everything to be much looser. So that's what it is. But I will go into a lot more depth with this, and I think I'll do a separate a separate video, I think, on vibrato, because I think that would be helpful. I think that would be helpful for everyone. Okay, what else have we got? Can a lack of rosin cause a scratching sound or just weaken the tone? Yeah, so probably the opposite, actually. The too much rosin is probably going to cause too much of a scratching sound. Too much bad quality rosin as well is going to cause too much scratch, because you're just delivering so much scratch from the bow onto the violin, onto the strings and all that kind of thing. So if you've got too much rosin, you'll probably just get a lot of fallout coming out, and you don't really need too much rosin. It's just too much excess. You don't really need it. It's just going to do nothing but just cause you problems. So just play the rosin off. A lack of rosin is going to give you that kind of wispy harmonic sound. So a lack of rosin isn't going to give you any grip. So the the bow is just going to sort of glide across the strings. It's not going to give you that nice kind of crunchy, nice gripping sound. If you've ever played with a brand new bow that doesn't have any rosin on, then you will know the kind of sound that I sort of mean. Have we got anything else? Let Time says, when you bow, do you apply pressure on the strings, or is it purely just the weight of the bow without any pressure from you? Probably a combination of both of those, really. I suppose it's just it doesn't really ever seem to be an issue. I think people think weight of the bow is an issue, but it's just very natural to bow. You're just using the pressure of your arm, and you're not really pushing down. I kind of feel if you've got your bow grip sorted, then the weight is evenly distributed on the bow and the fingers. So I don't think it sort of ever seems to be a problem. If you're bowing too hard, then you're going to get that kind of sound. But nobody wants to do that, because it actually physically means putting pressure on the strings. So if you just do some nice long bows, you'll just find that you just sort of, the bow will just sit on the violin. I don't really think, you don't really need to probably put any extra or any additional pressure on, I would say. Is there anything else? Mia, that was close enough. Yes, okay. Big problem I'm having hitting the neighbouring string with my fingers on the fingerboard is causing a scratching sound. Do I just have to time the bow and switch perfectly? So a big problem I'm having is hitting the neighbouring string with my fingers If you're hitting this, if you're hitting other strings with your fingers, it doesn't really matter. It's just it's the bow that's going to make the noise. So I could put, if this is what you're talking about, apologies if not, if I put my finger on a C on the A string and my finger touches an F on the D string, it doesn't really matter, because as long as I'm bowing on the A string. But if you are getting that kind of delayed sort of sound between the bow and the fingers, it just means that one is working faster than the other. So if you are right-handed like me, you'll probably find that your bow is moving to the correct string that it should do, but your fingers are ever so slightly lagging behind. So you need to work a little bit harder with the fingers. And of course, if the left hand is your non-dominant hand, that's going to be harder. The easy way to get around that is to keep doing scales. So if you do scales and arpeggios, it's just going to give you a lot more flexibility with your left hand. Okay, let's do one more question and then we will wrap it up. Jet says, why did your violin only have one fine tuner? A lot of professional violins only have one fine tuner. There's no reason. A lot of student violins will have 4 fine tuners, just because one, it's a lot harder to tune from the pegs because I tune everything up from here, and 2, they're not set up to tune for the pegs. This is an expensive professional violin, so the peg box has been professionally finished so that I can tune with the pegs. It is, I personally find, and I don't really know the reason why this is, other professionals will probably tell you the same, I feel like I get a better tuning when I'm tuning with the strings with the pegs, because I feel like I think I can just get them in tune a lot easier. So probably no technical reason. If you don't have the fine tuners, firstly, you've got to then be tuning your violin from the pegs, which is a lot more complicated to do. But secondly, if your violin isn't set up to really be tuning from the pegs in that way, then you're going to find it a lot harder. My pegs slide very easily, and then they stop when I want them to stop, and they slide when I want them to slide. So my pegs behave exactly like fine tuners do. Okay, so we'll wrap it up there. So just very quickly then, just to summarize, the reason why the professionals are bowing a lot smoothly is all to do with that technique that I've told you. So the first step that you would need to do is do it on the bow or a pencil if you want. So get to grips with that movement. So you're pulling your fingers into your hands like this, and then make sure that you can do that on the bow, trying to keep your thumb as bent as you possibly can. The next step would be to try that. No, my pegs are not geared. The next step would be to try that on static. So you're not really moving the bow, you're just moving the fingers, and the bow is just moving, I don't know, about an inch. Just so that you can get the feel of that movement on the actual string, because it's hard to do it with the bow in the air. And then the final step would be to incorporate that into your playing. So that you are not bowing like that, and that will change your playing. It's a game changer, but it is a technique that is going to take a really, really, really long time to get a hold of. So it'll be an ongoing challenge, an ongoing technique for you to do. So once you feel like you've nailed the process just with your bow and putting the bow on the string and just making that horrible scratchy sound, then you can start to incorporate it into your everyday playing. And for those of you that are still here, I forgot to ask a question earlier in the video. Do you guys prefer the live Sunday at 6 like we have done today? So that's mostly going to be about 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock for you guys in America. Or do you prefer Fridays at 5 p.m? If you can, let me know in the comments or in the chat, and I'll have a look. But if you've got a preference to any one of the two, then please do let me know. So Sunday at 6 p.m. UK, which will be 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock, I think. Or Friday at UK 5 p.m, which is 9 a.m, 11 and 12, I think, with all the time zones. So yeah, please do just very quickly let me know Friday or Sunday in the chat. and I'll see which one comes up most popular. But thank you very much for watching. I may, off the back of this, I may do a vibrato video next week. So if I do decide to do that, I will put I'll put a scheduled live up on my channel as I usually do, but I may do a video talking about vibrato. So yeah, if you want to see that, then thumbs up, or let me know. So yes, it seems like Sunday wins. Yeah, I think so, because it's not many people are going to be at work. So thank you all very much for watching, and thank you all for interacting as you usually do, and I will see you in next week's video, and it might be about vibrato. So thanks for watching.